added myself to the stream. Welcome. It is great to see you guys again. I was here earlier and we were talking about the missing 14-year-old in Houston, Texas. Henry Guyton is his name. He went missing by the NRG Stadium. And so the video that I did previous to this one has his countenance, his photographs, and the information. Also on my Twitter feed, you can find it. Crime Watchers is carrying it, and so we've kind of got the information out there. And we will address that more later on tonight. And I'm sorry because I've got a terrible, terrible neck pain. All right. So what I want to talk about now, let's see. First of all, welcome Jen Madison. Hey, Thing One, where's Thing Two? You know I'm going to ask. Hey, Kathy R. and Saricia. First of all, while we're waiting on a few people to come in, have a couple of little just a little bit of interesting information. The first one is, do we know how much? Okay, let's do it this way. I'm going to read 4 statements about the human brain. And then you guys have to tell me which one of the statements is true. So 3 of the statements are going to be wrong. 1 of the statements will be accurate. Okay. So the first statement is we only use 10% of our brains. The second statement is we need to exercise our brain because it is a muscle. The third one is your brain weighs 3 pounds. And the fourth one is alcohol kills brain cells. So make your decision. We only use 10% of our brains. B, or number 2, we need to exercise our brains because they are a muscle. 3, your brain weighs 3 pounds. 4, alcohol kills brain cells. Which one is the fact? Type in the answer. There's only one of those that's actually a fact. 1. So which one is it? 1, we only use 10% of our brains. 2, we need to exercise the brain because it is a muscle. 3, our brain weighs 3 pounds. 4, alcohol kills brain cells. Jen says it's number 1. Not number 1. That's actually a fallacy that we only use 10% of our brain. Different people, different situations, different times use different percentages of their overall capability. Thank you, Cinnamon. Hot. Phantasmic. How are you? All right. Everybody's guessing 4. Wow. That is not. The true fact is your brain weighs 3 pounds. Amazing, right? Except in the case of the Chadster, Chad Daybell. His brain weighs exactly 12 ounces. All right. Another one. Y'all ready for another one? I am low IQ, so I know I only use 10%. Not true, Jen. My goodness. Hey, Crystal Lynn, welcome. All right, Jackie Hughes. Okay, here we go. Another one. Oh, that's not the one I wanted. Oh, here's one. This is a question about the hedonic treadmill. Sounds delicious, doesn't it? Okay. So, do objects or experiences make us happier? What do you guys think? Do you think objects, going shopping? Do you think going shopping, buying cool things? Do you think objects make you happy? Or do you think experiences make you happy? So let's see what they say about the hedonic treadmill. That sounds like a place that sounds like some exercise equipment I could get behind. Okay. Money doesn't bring happiness, but it is useful if you need to buy things. Now I will tell you this, okay? So one time we were at I think it was a Christmas party, and we were sitting at a table that was filled with these important muckety mucks, right? That, the oil business types, all the money and pretty cars. Anyway, so we were having dinner with this group, and they got into this conversation about how money can't buy happiness, and you gotta go out and provide service, and do philanthropic types of things in order to feel good about yourself. And they kept going on and on about how money doesn't buy happiness. And of course, they're all sitting on inherited 30, 60, 80 million dollar companies. And so, they went on, and I just kept sitting there going, y'all are so full of it. And I finally said, well, you know what? Money may not buy happiness, but it definitely makes it easier to tolerate the misery. All right. And they all agreed. They all laughed and said, oh, that's so funny. And I was going, well, it's only funny because I'm right. So no, money won't buy happiness. That is true. But money makes it easier to find a solution to your problems, right? Money opens doors, avenues of opportunity. And if you can access avenues of opportunity, then you can definitely improve your mood, right? If you're having mood problems, then, hiring a personal trainer to help you get healthy, start working out. There is a direct relationship between cardiovascular activity, exercise, and increased mood or levels of serotonin and dopamine. It's an established reality. We have the empirical research that supports that contention. So, there are some basic things that we can all do that can either help us overcome mood problems, or if we're already in a pretty good mood, we're not having any type of real issue, it can help us reach a new level, another level of happiness and productivity and that kind of thing. But let's see if going shopping can improve your mood. I know it certainly helps mine. Okay. So going shopping, money won't bring happiness, but it is useful when you want to buy things. Research on happiness often refers to the hedonic treadmill. And by God, I'm waiting for Amazon to put one of those suckers up for sale, but not yet. The hedonic treadmill is actually not a piece of exercise equipment. It is a construct. It's a measurement of the relative amount of happiness that study participants gained from vigorous exercise. And the hedonic treadmill is the theory that says a person pursuing happiness through buying new objects will experience only temporary relief. However, what's quite interesting about that research is this: going and making some large purchase or some desired object, right? You get a temporary boost. Like there's this initial kind of, ooh, this is so yummy, right? And you get excited by that. But very soon, the joy, the little punch of dopamine, it falls off pretty fast, actually. And the research looked to see if a more expensive little morsel, if a more expensive little treat, if the joy from acquiring that object stays longer than something that is inexpensive. So if I if I put it down to, let's see, what can I, let's say that you want to buy a gold necklace. Well, you could purchase like a gold necklace that's like $5,000 because it's, what, an ounce and a half of Rolo gold, and it's got a half a carat diamond hanging off of it. Okay. So that'd probably be more than $5,000, but so that would give you a punch, be excited about that and be feeling good about that. Versus, let's say, a pair of Tahitian pearl earrings, which would be a couple $100 as compared to several thousands of dollars. Well, according to the research, you get that initial joy, you get that punch of pleasure. And what's so interesting about it is that it lasts about the same length of time. So the super duper expensive gift doesn't seem to have any lasting properties in terms of the amount of joy that it can. In terms of the amount of joy that it can give you. So how do you use that information? Like, how do you use the information that making a purchase definitely gives you a bit of happiness or pleasure, right? But it falls off very quickly. It doesn't matter if it's super expensive or if it's rather, economical. And so how do you use that? Well, you use that by, 1 minute, please. Okay, sorry about that. So you can make little small purchases over a period of time and kind of maintain, but you habituate very quickly. And so if you're buying gifts for yourself a little too often, they kind of lose their punch. So, it's a bit like gambling, variable, response rates, probably the way to go. Okay. One more. I have one more factoid. Where is it? How lie detectors work. We have a true crime creator, Chris McDonough, who he didn't invent the lie detector machine, but he was working with some kind of lying, detection system, right? Well, I thought this was really interesting. So the question is, William Moulton Marston was the inventor of the lie detector, also known as a polygraph. He was a great success, however, with something in an unrelated field. All right? Unrelated field. So the guy that invented the polygraph, William Moulton Marston, was his claim to fame, number one, comic book writing, number two, playing baseball, number three, treasure hunting, or number four, stand-up comedy. Was the inventor of the lie detector machine, was he famous for comic book writing, playing baseball, treasure hunting, or stand-up comedy? Who knows? Anybody know? Okay, so Clarissa said treasure hunting. That sounds fun, doesn't it? You Are So Mean is comic book writing. I think You Are Too Mean knows. You know this one, don't you? Emily knows this one. Oh, no, she said treasure hunting. It's not treasure hunting. Jackie Hughes said stand-up comedy. No, this is hilarious. So the inventor of the lie detector machine, William Moulton Marston, he was the creator of Wonder Woman. Okay. Crime fighter. Yes, that Wonder Woman. This man created the fictional lasso of truth and invented its closest real life counterpart. What a guy. Okay, so those were my 3 little factoids that I thought were stupidly fun. Okay. I know, right? And Clarissa, isn't your avatar? Aren't you a Wonder Woman? Oh no, but you're kind of almost a Wonder Woman. Okay. All right. So there we have it. Yes. All right. The CM's alter ego. Okay. Well, he did some kind of lie detector thing. I don't remember exactly what it was, but something, right? Okay. All right. Now we know why it's not admissible in court. Well, they're not admissible in court because they're highly listen, let me tell y'all something. I know you hear all the binging and dinging, and it's like I live in a casino, right? Okay, I don't live in a casino, but every door and every window on my house has these bings as part of the security system, and they're annoying. But yes, so we have people walking in and out of the house. So I apologize for that. Hey, Emily Gregory, welcome. How are you doing? All right. My car, what? My car was paid, so I took insurance off, then got stressed to the point of insanity. The kids' school is closed again. Oh my God. Oh, and you're in a different country. So, wow. Yeah. I'm going to tell you something. Justin Trudeau and his government are kind of scary people at this point. They're doing some things that without hyperbole, literally Nazi Germany did before they started the concentration camps. It's pretty scary what they're up to. Hey, birthday girl. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear BBT Boston. Happy birthday to you. All right. I hope you had a good birthday, BBT. All right. Hey, Nana Batu. All right. So what are we do? What am I doing today? Well, okay. So I'm in preparation actually. Tonight I will be live with Doctora Latina. Yes, if everybody would wish BBT Boston a happy birthday, that'd be great. All right. So Doctora Latina, who is a practicing psychiatrist, she and I went live last Monday night, and we started our discussion on Brian Koberger. And I believe the title was, The Face of Evil, correct? And we were really, we discussed visual snow. I think we were one of the first channels to really go in depth with what visual snow is, how it manifests, are there treatments, the psychological impact of living with that type of perceptual disruption or anomaly. So if you have not watched that, Cinnamon Hot, can you put the link to that first video that we did last Monday night? And the work that we're going to do tonight is going to be part 2. Uno, dos. We are going to talk about PTSD. The second part of this is rather inspired by Dylan, the roommate. The backlash that she has received from our fellow true crime communities. Um, I think people are just a bit uninformed or underinformed, right? I understand that it is very hard to it's hard to to accept that someone, a young woman, would see a masked fellow all dressed in black in your house at 4 o'clock in the morning, and that even though he walked right out the back door, that she did not contact or call anyone, much less the police, that she didn't call or contact anyone for 9 hours, right? Is that right? 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 8 hours, right? So that is very hard to, if you've never had a parallel experience, it is quite difficult to understand how that could be. And so having some level of understanding about PTSD, complex PTSD, your history of previous traumas, and whether or not you were able to successfully navigate that trauma and find your footing again before the next trauma hit. All of those things would determine how likely or unlikely Dylan would have been to find the courage to make a phone call to anyone. I rather envision her hiding in the room, perhaps barricading the door, and frightened, unwilling to make a noise, lest this bushy eyebrowed monster still be in the house. I kind of think what happened is she may have awakened. She was so afraid to do anything. And maybe she was just sitting in her room listening for the sounds of movement, just staying quiet, staying still until she began to hear the familiar sounds of the morning routine, right? And it just never came. The sound never, the house didn't wake up as expected. My understanding is that when she did finally reach out, it was to friends. It still wasn't to the police. And so I wonder if what we're going to find out during the preliminary hearing, what I wonder is, are we going to find out that she contacted one of the boys at the fraternity house, and several of those boys came up to the house, and that's when it kind of all went to hell in a handbasket, right? So, I can envision a young woman terrified, hiding behind a barricaded door and calling one of her friends at the fraternity house and saying, "Hey, we had a break-in last night. There were weird things. I don't hear anybody. Nobody's answering their phone. I think we need help here, but I can't. I'm afraid. I don't know what to do." Now, it is also rather curious. So it is curious that Dylan didn't reach out until noon. That is curious. But it is also quite curious that the door was seen at 9 a.m. wide open. Not the sliding glass door, the door that would open out to the road where the parking lot was, facing the fraternity house. Is it possible that the roommate that lived downstairs, maybe she spent the night somewhere and came in early in the morning and went straight to bed? Maybe she didn't want her parents to know, and so she didn't answer the phone. I don't know. I can envision a million possibilities, and we won't know until they do the preliminary hearing. And I believe that's going to be in June, correct? So why is it not showing? Still not showing. Why aren't you showing? There it is. Okay. So the talk that Dr. Latina and I will be doing tonight is an extension of the talk that we did last Monday night. And we're basically going to kind of cover this idea of what could have actually gone wrong that Dylan was unable to reach out or simply made a decision not to reach out until, hours after she had seen this guy. What are some of the possibilities? Like, what are some of the situations, psychiatric or other, even behavioral? What are some of the things that could have happened that would explain her failure to act, right? Now, we know that in PTSD or complex PTSD, we know that different parts of the brain is affected to differing degrees. The prefrontal cortex tends to be the most affected, sometimes to the exclusion of all other areas. And so but then if you add complex PTSD, then it can affect many other areas of the brain. And so what you have to remember is you're not talking about PTSD being a condition that would only affect thought, emotion. It has the capacity to impact the ability to actually even move your arm. It can affect your ability to make a decision. It can, if we consider all the different, and these are large divisions here on this video graphic, but it can affect your hunger, sex drive, whether you can sleep or you sleep too much. It can affect vision. I've seen people before develop a conversion disorder where they experienced some trauma and then they ended up losing their eyesight. That there was nothing wrong with their eye, not the eyeball itself. There was nothing wrong with the optic nerve. What went wrong was the interpretation of the perceptual sensory signals into the brain because of this intense trauma or fear. It can actually affect the level of oxygen, a level of available oxygen in one's blood, because it alters the breathing pattern. The inferior colliculus can be affected, which would cause someone to to experience like a roaring or a rushing sound in their ears. Your pituitary gland can be affected to a lesser degree. But the point is, with PTSD, the effect that it can have on your ability to process emotion, regulate your behavior, old brain stuff like hunger and sex drive, all of these things can be affected in some way or another by complex PTSD, and by PTSD to a little bit of a lesser extent. But if it's complex PTSD, this is such a powerful and debilitating condition. There were discussions online among some of these Greek fraternity, sorority, bulletin boards and whatnot, where there was talk about that one of the survivors in the house had undergone treatment for PTSD from something that had happened, earlier. So right there, she's got an existing, or may have, let's say theoretically, she may have an existing diagnosis of PTSD. And then you add in the trauma of that night and all that she experienced. She could have begun to develop that array of difficult symptoms that we would identify as complex PTSD. Again, complex PTSD affecting mood, decision making, perceptual awareness, your processing and understanding or experiencing your emotions, being able to regulate your behavior, even things related to like blood pressure, heart rate. It's powerful. The brain only weighs 3 pounds, and yet it is the most exquisitely complicated and powerful organ that we have. So people have a tendency to want, I'm sorry, 1 minute. People have a tendency to want to minimize the effects of mental health or trauma or mood problems like depression and anxiety. People have a tendency to want to minimize that as being somewhat insignificant to the human experience. The reality is this: whether you believe it, agree with it, or not, it's reality. Everything happens first in your brain before it can happen anywhere else in your body. And so when you consider how complicated and wide-ranging the influence that the involvement of the brain is to the overall health and functioning of the body, trauma affecting so many different parts of the brain, why wouldn't you expect trauma to be sufficient to interfere with someone's ability to pick up a telephone and call and say, hey, we had an intruder. I thought he was going to kill me. I'm barricaded in my room, and I pray to God he can't hear me now talking to you. If you are suffering from complex PTSD, if your brain has convinced you that you are in fear of your life, if you make a sound, if you move from that protected corner that you're in, you could die, then you will sit there 12 hours without making 8 hours without making a phone call. So that's where Dr. Latina and I are going to revisit this Brian Kohberger, the murders of Ethan Chapin, Xana Kernodle, Maddie Mogan, and Kaylee Gonsalves. We're going to talk about this from the perspective of the survivors, and could the trauma explain why they were not able to make those phone calls? And then the bigger question, I think, from a mental health perspective is, what do you do when you've been exposed to multiple levels of trauma without resolution and you develop a complex PTSD syndrome? How do you get help? What actually works in terms of finding some level of relief? So that's what we'll be talking about tonight. And I think that the mods have been sharing links to Dr. Latina's channel. And so we will be there tonight at 7:30 Eastern, 8:30 Texas time. And we're going to kind of tackle this from a mental health perspective. Dr. Latina is a practicing psychiatrist. I am a practicing licensed clinical psychologist, and we'll try to come up with, some form of explanation that might answer your questions of why in the world did Dylan not call someone? All right. So that's what we're going to be doing. And I'm going to talk a little bit about treatment, what good treatment for PTSD looks like. What are the elements that you would want to include in your path to healing? And so, yeah, it's gonna be an interesting night. So I hope you guys will be there. Okay, so BBT says allegedly. Come on, what? Oh, Boston time. BBT wants it to be Boston time. Okay, so it's going to be 7:30 Boston time and 8:30 Texas time. All right. Are you happy now, BBT? Huh? Are you? Class has started. Class will be going on tonight, Fractured Fairy Tales. The test. So when you say what testing do they do for diagnosis? Okay, if you are speaking specifically PTSD, PTSD diagnoses are made according to a DSM type of structure, right? But conversion disorder, which is a little bit different. Well, it's much different, but very often in PTSD you can see conversion disorder. Conversion disorder is got a higher level of rule out in that people will typically undergo a full range of diagnostic tests from every system imaginable. They'll go to neurology, they'll go to cardiology, they'll go they'll run the gamut on every system. And if the medical professionals are unable to determine an area of physiological damage or disruption, then they will make the referral over to psychiatry and say, could this be conversion? And then that's when, I would do an evaluation, Dr. Latina would do her thing, and then we would know, and then we would provide treatment. And actually, treatment for conversion disorder, if done well, can be very effective. But you don't just fly by the seat of your pants when you're trying to treat conversion disorder or PTSD. You have to know what you're doing. All right, looking forward to live tonight. Thank you, Angela James. I have PTSD, and I'm always looking for options. It's a struggle for sure. Absolutely, Angela. I hope that you will make it over to Dr. Latina's and ask questions. And she's brilliant. She will definitely have answers for you. And then I can address the actual therapy treatment side of it aside from medication. Let's see. What? I don't know what that says. What does that say? Oh, park the car at Harvard, y'all. I'm sorry, BBT. My Boston accent is really bad, but I do a great Texas accent. All right, let's see what else. Allegedly a practicing clinician. Thank you. Yes, I am an alleged psychologist. Actually, I am actually a psychologist. Depends on year 03, 05 if someone had their synapses form. Yes, true. Let's see. Yeah, so there is some brain imaging that can be done too, but typically you see the effects in behavior. Complex and baffling when it comes to murderers. Well, okay, so so you guys know that I had a pretty profound disagreement with this FBI guy, Gilliam. And, I disagreed with something he said. I thought it was not good. But I did listen to him on Dr. Drew the other night. And he talked about, that, and this guy knows. So he's FBI, he's Navy SEAL. I mean, he's done this. All this is his career. And he said, that he felt like, and if y'all go back and listen to my first videos on Bryan Kohberger, I said he looks like a serial killer. Whoever did this was before we knew that it was Bryan Kohberger. I went through the behaviors, the facts that we knew about the crime scene, and I outlined why I was under the impression that this could very well become the work of either a serial killer or a budding serial killer. And I actually kind of made the case in my first video. I made the case that the dog, the little dog Buddy that was basically skinned. I made the case that I thought maybe this guy, that Buddy's death was a part of what happened to the kids on King Street, and that Buddy was practice for this killer. That maybe, and I drew the connection, the parallel with the Netflix serial, the Dahmer story, and how they show, they illustrated fairly profound way that Dahmer really started with the animal mutilations and such. And Dahmer, in fact, did enjoy killing the pets of neighbors. So it wasn't unusual for him to find a live dog and mutilate it. So I made the connection in my first video on this Bryan Kohberger case. Well, it was the Idaho 4 case at the time. It was before they had identified Bryan Kohberger. And I made the case and I said my fear was that a serial killer type, that type of disturbed, thought disordered person, that they would watch a movie like the Dahmer series, and that it would titillate them and entice them, and they would begin practicing going through the levels of violence first in an imaginary format before graduating to an in vivo experience, real world experience, like catching Buddy and mutilating Buddy. That would have given him the practice that would be needed to know, what does it feel like to handle a knife? Do I have the ability to tolerate taking the life of a living creature? And so it could have been this hierarchical pathway of increasing real world violence from just imagination into an attack on an animal, and then finally on the living people. I also said, I felt like the guy was a stalker, a peeping Tom, and that he had been watching them for a long time, perhaps fueling this fantasy, ever escalating fantasy of violence. So I said this, back when all this happened in November. And so the other night when I was watching Jonathan Gilliam on Dr. Drew's channel, I was really glad to hear that he's got the same belief. He said just outright that to him, he felt like the motivation and the compulsions that drove Bryan Kohberger, that it looks more like what would be typical of a serial killer type than, a mass murder or a jealous boyfriend, or even someone who's angry because they got their sexual advances, rebuffed or whatever. So that was, that made me glad, because some, people still don't believe me when I say that I think Chris Watts is a psychopath, but in the accurate medical sense of the term. A lot of people say, "Oh no, you're wrong. You're so wrong." And I just smile and say, "I know I'm probably wrong." But I stand by that. And I even kind of made the case by using the Greek story of Narcissus. But with Brian Koberger, there's something else happening under the surface, y'all. This was not done by someone who had a real goal. He had no relationship with them. He had no reason to be angry with them. He obviously wasn't disorganized and acting in rage, because he was in and out of that house in 14 minutes? Did he make some mistakes? Yes, but on hindsight, they weren't enormously huge, sloppy mistakes. They weren't able to track him through the woods to his car, or that it doesn't seem to be. They found one latent shoe print, and then they found one piece of DNA on one tiny little buckle. So, if you give this impression that he's a raging madman, then you would expect to see DNA everywhere. You would expect to see him out of control, reacting, right? It was different. It was like he had at least plotted the murders in his head. He had at least made plans for, how am I going to control the DNA? I don't want to drop DNA all over the place, So it's it's very interesting. And I do think things went wrong. I do think that his goal was either Maddie or possibly Xana. And the reason that I say maybe Xana, because what if it wasn't Xana that called for DoorDash at 4 a.m.? What if it was the killer? What if the killer made the call under the guise of, or the ruse of, hey, I'm Xana, I'm ordering food. And when the knock came on the door, that's when you had one of the girls say, someone's here. Like, why? Why is someone here at 4 a.m.? And perhaps that was the distraction at the front door that allowed him to enter at the back door. Or maybe he entered the house when they were all out partying and he was hiding in the room with the little dog. There's a lot of possibilities, but I think it's an interesting consideration. Maybe he made the call for the DoorDash using Xana's name and she was the target. The other person that I feel like is a likely chance that she was a target is Maddie. And obviously that is because the sheath was beside her. And of all of them, it seems like she was the one that was killed while she was still asleep, that she was not alerted that someone was there. So I do think I continue to believe he's got some psychological stuff deep. He's got something wrong. He doesn't live in the same world that you and I live in. He's got some very strange motivations, I think, and some unusual proclivities. There are a couple of missing or unsolved murders of young women in Pennsylvania, near to where he lived, starting at approximately the time he was maybe turning 17, 18 years old. That's interesting. Now, one of them is a shooting. And I know, everybody wants to say, no, if it's a serial killer, it's got to be the same weapon. Well, that's not exactly true. But I get I understand the flavor of the thing. But there are a couple of stabbings. And then you've also got like Tammy, is it Pitkin? She's an unsolved murder stabbing that's approximately 7 hours away from University of Washington. And that was in October of 2022. So, I'm not going to be surprised that if they're able to tie this guy to other murders. There is some emerging news that I'm so sorry about those birds. I don't know why my house is so loud. I apologize. There is some emerging information news that they have been able to ascertain that Brian Koberger was running a group on Facebook called Papa Rogers. Papa Rogers gives you the impression that this guy was an Elliot Rogers fan. So was he incel? This group he's running, did it have the incel hate speech and misogyny and jokes about, violence and against women and that kind of thing? It's very interesting the way that it's all unfolding. And it was nice, I have the psychological point of view. It's kind of nice to see a law enforcement person that was similar, had the similar ideas about it. So, all right. Now then, so this has gone a little bit longer than I had intended, and I was having to formulate my thoughts as we were talking because I wasn't going to talk about all this right now. And I haven't said anything now that we would have talked about tonight that we had planned to talk on with Dr. Latina. I do think it's important to note that for PTSD and hold on 1 minute, please. All right, I'm sorry, y'all. So it is important to note that with PTSD, we can assess for client level of functioning in terms of behaviors, as behaviors that would be associated with PTSD. We can identify them as mild, moderate, severe, or very severe in impairment of three domains: social, relational, vocational, or like occupational endeavor, which would, include education or whatnot. The efficacy of treatment, the outcome studies have found efficacy of treatment is directly related to ongoing assessment of symptoms. So specifically, when you are working with someone with PTSD, complex PTSD, conversion disorder, or like obsessive compulsive disorder, those types of conditions, when you are providing treatment, your treatment is more effective if you're doing a continual assessment of symptoms in terms of severity, location, to create awareness for the client having awareness for how they are experiencing their thoughts and the resulting behaviors, actions, feelings, or experiences can be a huge help in them identifying which triggers are more likely to cause a big event, cause underlying irritation and frustration. And then, of course, you have treatment protocols that include mood-related treatment, behavioral interventions, and also a psychoeducational component. Psychoeducational component in the treatment of PTSD is huge. It's a huge part of this treatment in terms of efficacy of treatment. So these are conditions that are, they do require a clinician who is not only really caught up on the new research, the outcome treatment research, but also a clinician who is very organized and methodical in their approach, to know the person, the patient, to know the symptom array, to know the patient's strengths, to know the available effective coping skills that they hold. All of that is then judged and changed through a lens of academic knowledge about the physiology of PTSD, and then the teaching of effective coping skills. So it's definitely not one of those situations where it's standard, one size fits all, and nothing like that. It's a ongoing process of evaluation, assessment, identification, and then development of coping skills, and then practicing coping skills, implementing coping skills, working through problems through imagination, and then moving that patient into an in vivo experience while you're coaching them through the same coping skills. It's effective, it works, but it's a commitment. It is a dance that is really, really intricate. One of the big things that we've learned for veterans is the biggest population that we have of people with symptoms of PTSD. Although there are other traumas that war is not the only cause of PTSD. There's lots of causes of PTSD: childhood abuse, sexual assault. There's a lot. Even people that have gone through being homeless are exposed to life and death, types of experiences. So we do know that people, veterans with PTSD, they have responded very well to getting together as a group that's part of the identity, and then using survival types of experiences like camping and whitewater rafting. And those are, we learned a lot about the treatment of PTSD in general by studying the veterans and what worked with them, and then adjusted it, appropriately. So this is what we're going to be talking about with Dr. Latina tonight. Again, there's so much information contained in this that we'll never touch everything tonight, but hopefully it's organized enough and planned out enough that it'll make sense to you. And then, you'll gain a bit of a richer understanding of how trauma, PTSD, how trauma can affect the brain, PTSD can develop, and then how is someone affected by the symptoms of PTSD? How does it affect their behavior, their mood, their thoughts? And then the big one is, can you get well? Can you get healthy and regain, a life that you feel in control and safe? So that will be tonight, 7:30 Eastern, 8:30 Texas time. And I will see you on Doctora Latina's channel. All right. I hope you'll be there. I hope you'll share this to your friends. And if one of the mods can drop the link to Dr. Latina, that'd be great before we ended this. And then we did a live last Monday night if you wanted to go watch that first. And then what we're going to do tonight will be part 2. How's that? All right. Hit the thumbs up, people. Leave a comment under the video. I'm flirting with the damn algorithm. It's not doing any good, though. I'm usually a pretty good flirter. It's not working with the algorithm. YouTube is immune to my charms. All right. Y'all help me out. Thumbs up, comment underneath the video. And, I would be honored if you subscribe to the channel. All right. I will see you all tonight. And I hope you have like a really yummy, great dinner before it's time for the show.